ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the Armchair Booking Wrestling Podcast. I'm your host. My name is Super Tired Steve, and joining me as my co-host is Delirious Dwaylen.
Hey, everybody.
Yeah, see, he's tired too. When he gets tired, in fact, when we all get tired, we all get delirious.
Yeah.
But it's that time of year when everybody's just going to be tired. Weather change and all, and yeah. But anyway, before we really start sounding like old men, I will give a disclaimer up front because we have the policy on the show. Of course, we don't talk about religion. We don't talk about politics. This show, we might, just due to the nature of the show, it might steer into politics a little bit. You know, we'll try not to, if it does steer into it, you know, we won't keep it there too very long. But this subject may be kind of controversial. And because it has been kind of controversial in the past, some of the younger listeners may not understand it. Some of us older listeners, we definitely understand it.
Mm-hmm.
If you've been in the workforce, you understand it.
Yeah.
You know, for good or bad, whether you agree or not, doesn't matter. You know, so, but we're going to be discussing, does wrestling need to have a union? Is it time for wrestling to have a union, a workers' union? And this has come about because of recent events we discussed 2 weeks ago, actually, with we were talking about Sasha Banks and Naomi.
Mm-hmm.
See, I always, associate Sasha and Bianca ever since WrestleMania 37 because they put on such a phenomenal match. But it was Sasha and Naomi. They were the WWE Women's Tag Team Champions. And they went in there and dropped the belts on John Laurinaitis' desk, like in a suitcase, apparently, and threw up the deuces and were out. And they said they're tired of getting treated like the way they are. And it's not that they themselves are necessarily mistreated; it's their characters, the way they're being handled, and they're given belts, but not defending them. In fact, they had them in a match they were trying to put them in a match against each other.
Mm-hmm.
And they're getting tired of everything being treated as an afterthought. And so they're gone. And of course, the bad thing is they're still under contract. Now, they have been suspended, from what I understand, without pay.
Yeah, suspended indefinitely without pay. All of their merchandise has been pulled from from WWE shop, so they're not making any residuals off merchandising.
Yep. So, and the link I had up all of a sudden disappeared. Here it is. And this would not be the first time the subject of a union in wrestling has ever been brought up, because Jesse Ventura was the first one to bring it up.
Yep.
You know, but we'll get into the history, get that. We'll get into some other instances of wrestlers who maybe could have benefited from a union. Even something that happened last night, which we're debating even before we start recording. Was it real, or is it a work shoot, or is it a shoot that's being turned into a work? Yeah. So who knows?
Something that kind of verifies, actually it really does verify what Sasha and Naomi were saying about how, they give them the tag titles and then treat the tag titles as an afterthought. They quickly announced as soon as, they left and dropped the titles off to John Laurinaitis that they were going to have a tournament to determine new women's tag team champions. Well, now that idea is out the window because they don't have enough women to put together.
Yeah, they don't.
To make tag teams, because they broke up every actual tag team or released everybody that could have been a tag team. So now they're just not going to do anything with the women's tag team titles. So it just verifies exactly what, Sasha and Naomi were saying, is that they don't really care about the titles.
Yeah. And we also have said that even as much as what they like to give a lip service, I don't think they care as much about women's wrestling as what they say they do.
Oh, they don't. I've always, me and Hope talked about this. Like, this is back in 2015 when they called up, everybody from NXT, and all that. And then they really put the focus on women's wrestling for the next 2 or 3 years. I told my wife, I said, they're doing this because if you look around every other sport, women were coming to the forefront of those particular sports. So WWE is all about, one, they're always behind. But two, they're like, oh, well, we got to get on that because everybody else is doing it. So they pushed their women's roster and let them actually wrestle for a few years. And then once that kind of died down, then they were like, oh, okay, well, now we can go back to how it was. We don't really care about women's wrestling. We were just doing it because everybody else is doing it.
Yeah, let's bring back John Laurinaitis. He knows how to do it.
Yeah. That's why they never did another Evolution pay-per-view, because Stephanie McMahon had been quoted saying that women's wrestling did not make money.
The way they branded it.
Exactly. Maybe. Women's wrestling has made money for decades. WWE women's wrestling does not make money because they don't do it correctly.
Yeah, because I will tell you, this past Saturday night at the NWF Revolution Rising, oh my, there was some absolutely fantastic matches. Not every match was fantastic. You can't expect them to all to be, because if every match is fantastic, none of them are fantastic.
Right.
But there were a couple that definitely stood out. None of the matches were bad, I will say that. But the ones that stood out, of course, were Big Mama against Flea the Slayer, I think. And then the one that has had a lot of people talking about it, Nikki Victory and Kylie Ray.
Yeah, that has been all over Twitter.
My dude.
Yeah, people were.
I'll tell you what, that one, I mean, had everybody, on their feet. I mean, they told the entire story in the ring, just like what we were saying on Ted the Hillbilly Hill on the Hill Truth the other night. I mean, it was just a phenomenal, one of the best matches I've ever seen in person. And so that's why everybody, including Roger Ruffin, he tweeted about it, and he said these two girls are going to be stars, no doubt about it.
That's like at the AEW pay-per-view, Double or Nothing. You had Thunder Rosa defending the women's title against Serena Deeb. That was a absolute masterclass in pro wrestling, whether men or women. That was just a phenomenal wrestling match. And it's like, because people complain about AEW's women's division, but those women are able to go out and tell their story in the ring and do what they're actually capable of doing without all the glossier choreographed type stuff that WWE expects their people to do.
And before we get into all that, I'll go ahead and give our contact and listening info. If you would like to email us, it's armchairbookingpodcast@gmail.com. You can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/armchairbookingpodcast. You can find us on Instagram also at armchairbookingpodcast. You can find us on Twitter at Booking Armchair. You can find us on TikTok at Armchair Booking Podcast. If you see us on YouTube, well, you already know we're there, but we're on YouTube, obviously. And you can find us just about any audio platform that there is. If we're not there, just let one of us know. We will do what we can to get ourselves added. And we are hosted by Spreaker. That has been one of the best moves I ever made, was switching to Spreaker. And you can find our merch at tpublic.com/user/armchair-booking-podcast. You can find Dwaylen on Twitter at fat_daddy73.
Yep.
And you can also find some of our friends at TNC Sports Talk. And I have to tell you a story about something that happened Saturday. In fact, Justin, he actually texted me about 2 minutes ago. That's why if you saw me, I was kind of all to the head, all to the side, had to respond to him. But TNC Sport Talk, go check them out. Also, definitely go check out the Hill Truth, especially his last episode has to be probably my favorite.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
I mean, it doesn't have anything to do with us being on it. But yeah, we were on Ted the Hillbilly Hill. We were on his podcast this past Sunday night, and we had a really good time recording. And he is just a wealth of knowledge. And I mean, I feel like we're kind of sitting under the learning tree when we listen to his analysis. And then when he goes into some in-depth analysis with us, kind of off the air, telling us about stats and kind of giving us advice. I mean, he kind of makes us look at things in a way I've never even thought about looking at it before.
Absolutely.
I was like, okay, I guess we are doing, pretty decent, But yeah, definitely go check him out, and go check out Bless Their Hearts and True Crime Cast. They're not wrestling, but they've been on Jericho's podcast, and they're big wrestling supporters. and they've had me on their podcast, and I've written stuff for their podcast. So always got to give them a shout out and go support indie wrestling. Just like this T-shirt I'm wearing, the NWS Summer Sizzler. They're starting to kick that back up, for this year's Summer Sizzler program.
Cool.
Yep. So, what were you saying right before I went into the big tirade about?
Let me think. Sorry, folks, I'm getting old and I can't remember as quick. I can't remember now. It'll come back to me though. Go ahead.
Okay. I was going to say this Saturday, Revolution Rising, they're at the VFW on Vine Street in downtown Cincinnati. Met up with Justin, and I had a really good idea on paper because I had mentioned it. Just got a brand new microphone. Tried it out this past Thursday when we interviewed Big Mama, and it was working just fine. All right, cool. Get there, and they're like, all right, we'll have you sit up right here. I was like, I'm going to have to move because I need to have power for my laptop. All right, cool. Move me. The only place available is right by the speaker.
Oh.
So trying to get that set up. Well, Justin, came, and he actually wasn't going to set up his equipment for theirs. So he decided to help me out. And so he actually pulled out his equipment. He had it with him. And by the way, I like the setup he has, like this effects board that he has, everything ran through.
Oh, cool.
But he has a handheld microphone. And that one, it blocked out all noise. So I would have been able to use it had I had any wrestlers to actually interview.
Right.
Because at the same time they were doing that, we were also part of the meet and greet. Well, the meet and greet was for the wrestlers. They really weren't interested in me as a podcast. They weren't really interested in Justin as a podcast.
Right.
Not that they didn't care about us. They just kind of looked at us like, okay, you're not wrestlers. And, so it was a good idea on paper. It didn't pan out in reality, but we still had a good time. And then I realized when I got home, this is Justin's handheld microphone. And didn't realize, well, because he actually had to leave for a little bit because he had to check on Trey, make sure Trey was okay. Because Trey couldn't get his cart like over to where we were, so it was just where they were sitting. It was a lot easier for him where he was sitting. And so he had to go back checking them. Well, right about then I realized I was not going to get any interviews whatsoever. So I started packing up, but he had left his backpack over there. He said, yeah, if you need, if I can't make it back over here, just go ahead and put our stuff in there. I think I put my tripod for my new microphone in his backpack. And that's actually what he was texting me about because here's the new microphone. Notice
with no tripod.
With no tripod. And I haven't been able to get it to work since either, but I figure I'll try it another time. Trying to get it, making sure, see if I can figure out what I did. But I texted him and said, hey, I said, I accidentally put your microphone in my backpack. Okay. Then I looked around and I was like, by the way, could you check your backpack for my tripod? But yeah, he actually texted, now it's been like 10 minutes ago, and he was asking, he said, hey, what's your microphone for tonight? I said, I switched back to the headset microphone. So we're recording right now, which the headset microphone does work, it works just fine if it's just me. But when I'm recording the other podcast, the Cubicle Chat podcast, like I did last night, by the way, Avery stood in. I don't know if you saw that.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah, because we were discussing Stranger Things, and then the strange things that happened in this town. Something that happened to me this past Monday night. That. Yeah, my daughter said she has never been so scared in her life.
That was just really weird. I told Hope about it, and she's like, "That's really strange."
Yeah, in case anybody's wondering what Joel and I are talking about, just to make a long story short, knock on my door a little bit after 10:30 at night. Some guy claiming people were after him. He didn't try to come in the house. He didn't even ask to come in the house. I will say that. But he was saying, he asked me to call somebody because people were after him. Of course, I'm looking around. I'm like, I don't see anybody, but I closed the door. I said, hold on. And I called 911, told them. And Tawana called her next door neighbor to let him know what was going on because we got some crazy dude on our front porch. Just want to let you know what's, in case, you're outside because it's summertime. And of course, most kids don't have a bedtime or a curfew during the summer.
Yep.
But he was out and he was like texting us like, yep, I see him. So I said, yeah, the guy's, he keeps knocking on our door, and even though we're talking to him through the ring, and but so him and his brother, they went out to the car. They got in there, and they were kind of watching him just in case, And they're like, which he told me, hopefully, he said he probably wouldn't have. Hopefully, he said, but if the guys started trying to bust in our door, then yeah, of course, if the guy would have tried to bust in my door, then he wouldn't have left in the police cruiser like he ended up leaving in. He probably would have left in an ambulance.
Right.
But so eventually the cops came 40 minutes after I called them, after the second time I called them.
Oh, wow.
So 40 minutes, 2 phone calls for them to come out. So I'm not happy about that. I have not told my friends who work for the Bryan County Sheriff's Department my thoughts about that, but I will probably speak to one of them here in the next few days.
I don't blame you. That's ridiculous that the response time was that long.
Or somebody, I said, look, he's starting to get kind of belligerent. He's agitated because he was saying there's somebody with guns around the corner. And I was like, the only people out there are my neighbors. And he said, well, they went down to your neighbor's driveway, talked to them, then they left. My neighbor said, there's not one single person who came down our driveway. So the cop took him away, and we're thinking he's either on something, but the sheriff's deputy said his pupils are not dilated and he did not smell like alcohol. So that lessens the odds of him being inebriated in some way. Or maybe he's off something he should be on.
I was thinking maybe it's a mental health issue.
Yeah. And here's I don't know if I told you about this. Here's the kind of another weird twist. Got his name. Tawana looked up on Facebook and she said, we have a mutual friend. And she said, who's the mutual friend? It's Tawana's cousin. Yeah, from her mom's side like a second or third cousin. It's her mom's cousin's daughter. So it's like a third cousin or second cousin, 8 times removed, whatever it is. But it's her cousin. And so she messaged her and she's like, hey, this guy, porch cops, crazy, whatever. And this girl she's like, yeah, she's like, she's like, that's my cousin. So it's this other girl's cousin on her dad's side, so it's Tawana's cousin's cousin who was, on our front. Yeah. And, she's like, yeah, we used to be really close. But then when we became teenagers, he just couldn't stay out of trouble and he got mixed up with drugs. And he did say he had a warrant out for his arrest in Florida for bad checks. I'm like, they're not going to extradite somebody for bad checks. They're just not going to waste time or money for that. They'll just wait for him to go back to Florida and say, yeah, he's there. That's it.
Yep.
So I did check with somebody where they took him to a hospital for a mental health evaluation, which that's like the no crap moment of the year, which is where they should have taken him because, And I watched him. He searched him and everything before he got him in the vehicle. And he's like, sir, there is nobody following you. And he's like, yeah, they are. And I said, look, I said, why did you choose my house? He's like, because that's where I was in front when they were after me. Like, I'm going in circles here, So
that's crazy.
for some reason, my wife's cousin's cousin chose our house to have a mental breakdown on our front porch at 10:30 at night on Memorial Day. And I didn't get to sleep until like 1 o'clock in the morning. I still had to get up at 4:30.
Right.
So Tuesday was not a fun day for me at work. I was sitting there.
I bet.
Told my boss what was up. I was like, yeah, I'm kind of dragging butt today. He's like, yeah. He's like, yeah, that's one of the things. But so anyway, so that's how, that was the end of that weekend. So it's strange things in a small town, but we're talking about stranger things because Hawkins, Indiana is also supposed to be a small town that if I lived there, I would just move. I really would. Have you seen it yet, Stranger Things 4?
I haven't watched any of it yet. Savannah has, and she likes it, but
this one, dude, it's pretty dark. This new season, it's like one long stretched out horror movie.
Well, okay.
But so if you like horror movies, yeah, go for it. It's still really well done. So, but anyway, we're here to talk about wrestling. So I will say up front, I mean, I am not a fan of most unions because I think the original intent has kind of gone by the wayside in a lot of places. However, there are instances where a union is necessary, and wrestling has become that where, especially because of one particular company, which ironically enough are headquartered in a place where like every other industry, like all of them, even fast food, is unionized.
Yeah.
And when Jesse Ventura, he actually tried to talk, the boys into starting a union. He even says right now, I'm reading an interview from when he was on Stone Cold's podcast. He said, Vince is lucky I didn't go for the Senate, because had I gone into the Senate, I would have started a senatorial investigation as to why pro wrestlers are called independent contractors when they're not. You work for one company. They order you around, control your whole life. How are you possibly an independent contractor? Except they don't have to pay your Social Security.
Yep.
That's why. And so, but yeah, I mean, he put it, he threw some math in there. He tried to start it, got ratted out by Hulk Hogan.
Hulk Hogan. Yeah.
And he found that out a few years later when Vince actually sued, or Jesse Ventura sued Vince. Because it was the royalties from the videos.
Yeah.
And he's like, I wonder if we can find out who it was. And so he had his lawyer actually ask, some questions, and he said, well, how did you find out? Oh, it's Hulk Hogan. Vince flat out said, it was Hulk Hogan, went straight to him and said, hey, Jesse's trying to.
Yeah, because Hulk wasn't trying to have a union, because Hulk was making more money than anybody.
This interview, WrestleMania 3, Hogan made more than everybody else combined.
Yeah.
Hogan wasn't meant to have a union.
No, he wasn't trying to have a union. He's like, I'm here and everybody else is down here. So that's how I like it. So
yeah,
as far as money goes. So
yeah. So I mean, he even made a lot more money than Andre. Which, I mean, they were the main event for a reason.
And here's the thing, which is crap, really, because Andre was the reason that Hogan became as big of a star as he did, with his match with Andre at WrestleMania 3, when he slammed Andre, which has only happened because Andre allowed it. Because everybody has gone on record and said if Andre did not want to be moved, you were not going to move him.
Nope. I mean, because by that point, he had to have weighed close to 600 pounds.
Oh, yeah. I think he was billed, at 535 or 540, but I feel like it was closer to probably about 570, 580.
Oh, yeah, easily.
Well, in Japan, that happened one time. There was a wrestler in Japan. I can't think of the wrestler's name right now. But he kind of went into business for himself and just started like shooting on Andre. So Andre's like, okay. So then the guy went for body slams and forearms and all this, and couldn't move Andre, because Andre's like, I'm not helping you if you're just going to go into business for yourself and come at me. So if Andre hadn't have let Hogan do all the stuff he was able to do at WrestleMania 3, Hogan would not be the star he became, because that match made him, even though he was already the champion. That was the match
that took him to like stratospheric levels.
Yeah, that really took him from like, okay, he's the world champion of this company. He beats Andre. He is now in the stratosphere. He's a pop culture icon automatically because of that, because everybody was talking about that. Even people who were not wrestling fans were talking about Hogan slamming Andre.
Yep, because the next morning, like watching whatever news program was on at my house before I went to school, they actually showed like the first part of the match where he tried to pick up Andre, and Andre he fell on him.
Yeah.
But they said, but Hogan, the Hulkster, he came around and he beat him, and I was like, okay, all right. So I knew it already, before we watched wrestling the next Saturday. Hey, Hogan won.
Yeah.
But yeah, Hogan didn't want anybody unionized because it would affect his money.
Oh yeah, because And like even in WCW, which needed wrestling like even like peak WCW, like 96 through 98, they needed some kind of union because you had a few people up here that were getting paid top dollar for very little dates and very little effort. But then you've got all the other guys that are carrying the show week to week, making peanuts compared to what the other guys are making.
Yeah, because Hogan and Scott Hall and Kevin Nash, the rumor, but some people said yes, true. Other people said it wasn't. They had the favored nations clause, which meant that nobody made more money than them.
Oh, it was true. Kevin Nash said that was true.
Yeah.
He said, me and Scott went to Eric Bischoff, and it was like, well, this guy's coming in making this, but we've been doing all this stuff with the NWO and moving merchandise and all this, so we need to get paid on that scale. And that's how it started. And then anybody who came in that were making more than Hall, Nash, or Hogan, those three automatically got bumped up.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, on their end, smart business move. If they're going to pay you, take the money. But as far as discrepancy between those three and then everybody else on the roster, there was a giant pay discrepancy between those three and everybody else.
And even if it was just for one night, like when Rodman came in for just one or two appearances, they better make sure they,
but they still had to, like, if Rodman was making this, then the NWO had to be making this. And when I say NWO, I talk about the core three.
Yeah.
Not the 3,000 other members that they.
Yeah, we're not talking about Horse Hogan.
No, it's Hall, Nash, and Hogan. To me, that's the NWO.
Yep.
And
and of course, the ironic thing, you look at Kevin Nash's his best friend back in WWF at the time, HBK, Shawn Michaels. I'm pretty sure his paycheck wasn't suffering. I'm pretty sure he was probably the highest paid at that time. If it wasn't him, it'd have been Stone Cold, or The Rock hadn't quite hit that yet, even though he was pretty close. And that actually brings up something else. We're talking about Sasha Banks, because what she's doing, and she's fed up, and Naomi's fed up. I think Sasha has more of a leg to stand on because Sasha hasn't had the legal problems Naomi's had. That will hurt Naomi, I think. But with Sasha, I mean, she's looking, going, look, you're not treating these titles with respect. You created the women's tag team titles, but you're not letting us defend them. You're putting us against each other.
Yeah.
And it's not the first time she's walked out either.
No.
And I feel Sasha is, but Sasha knows that whatever happens to her, whatever she can fight for, she's kind of fighting for everybody else.
Yeah, because whatever's happening to her, she knows it's happening to all the other women on the roster. And she is the highest profile wrestler. She's the highest profile female wrestler on that roster. Because she does have that crossover appeal, and she's done work outside WWE as far as, like, she's been on episodes of The Mandalorian. She's cousins with Snoop Dogg. She's got that crossover appeal. So, she's in a better position to take those hits and take that heat to, because, like, you look at, let's say Shayna Basler.
Okay.
Shayna Basler, who I believe would absolutely stand up for that kind of thing. She wouldn't be able to take that hit.
No.
Sasha can take that heat and not take the damage. Other wrestlers on that roster can't afford to take that heat. And especially if the rumors are true and her contract's coming up, I mean, she's got all the leverage in the world, really. Because because she's been suspended indefinitely. If her contract's up in the next few months, that means there's no non-compete clause.
Yep. Once it's up, it's up.
Once it's up, it's up. The only thing she'll have to leave behind is her name, unless she's trademarked it, which I don't think she has.
I don't think she has either. I mean, she'll just go back to calling herself by her real name,
Mercedes, exactly.
Which is actually a pretty cool name to begin with.
And here's the thing. Everybody knows who she is. So it ain't going to matter what her name is.
Right.
They're going to own the, they're going to own the name Sasha Banks. But everything else about Sasha Banks is going to go wherever she goes.
Yep. Because they could even say a wrestler formerly known as Sasha Banks.
Yeah.
And boom. And former co-host Kyle, he actually sent a question to me across Facebook Messenger, and he was asking, do you think, is Sasha Banks like the new Shawn Michaels? And the question is very intriguing because I can definitely see the comparisons. Because Shawn Michaels, I mean, he did walk out a couple of times also. But I think the big difference is Shawn Michaels, to be honest with you, was kind of acting like a whiny little brat.
Shawn Michaels, he's my all-time favorite wrestler. I think he's one of the greatest to ever do it. In the mid-90s, when he was his first run, he was a terrible human being. He was just, he, like you said, he was bratty. He was extremely political, used his backstage power to make sure that, nobody got to his level or nobody surpassed his level or, whatever. And, but with Shawn also had a few suspensions also. So with Sasha, I feel like it's different because I don't feel like that she's whining. A lot of people on social media do. But the thing is, Sasha Banks has done her job. She has put over everybody that they asked her to put over.
That exactly.
I mean, she put over Ronda Rousey at the match at the Rumble during Ronda's first run, which was by far Ronda's best match. Honestly, to date, that's still her best match because she had that match with Sasha Banks.
With Sasha, exactly.
And Sasha has done, I mean, her and Bayley fought for the tag titles. They got the tag titles. Then they walk into WrestleMania and get told you're dropping the tag titles to the Iconics. They didn't have any issue with the Iconics. They wanted a long run so that people would respect the tag titles. And her argument was, people can't respect these titles if we're just hot-shotting the titles. We need a long run so we can establish the titles as something important. And WWE didn't want to do that. They put them on the Iconics because they knew it would get a huge reaction from the crowd because they're all about their WrestleMania moments.
And the Iconics, to be honest with you, at the time, the Iconics were over. Big time.
They were over. But then as soon as they put the tag titles on them, WWE ruined them.
Yeah.
They never had them defend them. And they had them lose every single match that they were in. Like they have non-title matches with teams and lose. Your champion should not be losing every week on television.
No, they shouldn't.
And then so Sasha got frustrated and she left for a while. I think it was like 4 months.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Yep.
And she said she just needed some time away. She said she talked directly to Vince McMahon and he was fine with it. So that should have showed them then she is already frustrated with how you're treating your women's division. So there are things you need to fix. And they haven't done it. If anything, it's gotten worse.
Yeah, because in one of the things, kind of making the same comparison to Shawn Michaels, when Shawn Michaels, he had an issue, it seemed, with putting people over when he did not want to lose the title. He would have rather had it taken from him or surrendering it because he lost his smile. And Sasha never had any issue because there was the kind of the joke. It's like, well, Sasha just won a title. She's going to lose it at the next pay-per-view because
and she did. Yeah, they always booked her to lose it on her first title defense.
Yep, with the exception, I think one and that was like a couple years ago where she actually defended a title successfully, like once or twice on a pay-per-view, then lost it.
Yeah, because she beat Bayley for the title, and then she ended up successfully defending the title against Bayley, and she had a couple of other good defenses, and then she lost it to Bianca
at one of the greatest WrestleMania matches ever. And she didn't have somebody sitting backstage with her fist taped up, going, you better do what's right.
Yeah, I'm gonna need you. I'm gonna need you to do business, or you're gonna get busted up when you come to the curtain.
Yeah, yeah. You think the Marines up in Syracuse, you think they put a beat down on you, but
Shawn Michaels is a 3-time WWE champion and a 1-time world heavyweight champion. He lost the WWE title the first time because he lost his smile and said there was something wrong with his knee and relinquished the title. And the story goes because Brett was supposed to get his receipt. He was supposed to win the title back at WrestleMania 13. And so a month before, Shawn loses his smile and has an injured knee and relinquishes the title. Then he lost it to Stone Cold, which he did not want to do, but The Undertaker kind of made sure that happened.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then, of course, the World Heavyweight title, he won it at Survivor Series in 2002 and then lost it to Triple H. Of course, he lost it to his best friend. So,
right. But
it's not like he was putting anybody over. The only person he ever put over for the WWE title was Steve Austin.
Oh, yep. That is very true.
Mm-hmm.
And I think in their case, because Shawn just walked away where other people would not have just been able to do that.
Yeah.
That is a case where if they did have the union, that the union would have fought for the ones underneath that, because Shawn, if they would have fought for Shawn, that's where I said some of the negative things you can have from unions, because I've actually seen people hold on to jobs that they would show up late if they showed up at all
because they were union.
Because they were union and they were able to keep it. It's like you have people really, really wanting to work these jobs, willing to actually come into work, but but that's another story. But there, like I said, there's the cons, but in this case right now with Sasha and Naomi, they've been suspended indefinitely without pay. Basically, indefinitely, we know that means their contracts are up in 2 months.
I know Naomi's is because she was in negotiations about a new contract, and I think that may have been some of the issue that she was frustrated with, because I think it's just my opinion, my assumption, but I think they were trying to lowball her on her upcoming contract. We were talking about her having not as much of a leg to stand on as Sasha's. But what helps Naomi though is that she's married to Jimmy Uso, who's cousins to Roman. Roman has a lot of say, and Roman has a lot of power. So that's one thing that will help her, because Roman's going to look out for his family. But I still feel like Sasha's in a better position because she is the higher profile of the two. But what does WWE think is going to happen if if her contract expires with no non-compete clause? She was going to walk to AEW because Sasha Banks is going to. I mean, you're going to want to be on TV, and people complain all the time about Tony Khan hiring,
ex WWE.
That was even a very contentious point of MJF's pipe bomb last night. My issue with that though is, okay, did some of these people make their name from WWE? Yes, but it's like, why is it any different going anywhere else? It's like, okay, in everyday life, we don't switch jobs and they say, oh, well, that's that former, so-and-so guy,
right.
Ex so-and-so employee or whatever. And it's like, if you have top tier talent on the market, then you sign the top tier talent regardless of where they came from. And considering for years, WWE was the only place, of course, a lot of ex WWE guys are going to filter into these other companies because
And how many times did we see when WWE or WWF was cherry picking people,
Yes.
out of the AWA and out of Jim Crockett and out of
Yeah.
World
Well,
Class
even now they're trying to cherry pick people. It's just they can't officially have any contract discussions with them, but they're very interested in MJF. I've seen reports where there's a few other people in AEW, even people that they've released. Now that they see what they're doing in AEW, it's like, oh well, we need to scoop them back up, and it's like, why? So you can do the same thing you did before. That's
and I think one of the things, if they do manage to unionize, that we won't see as much of are all these mass releases that they've been doing every quarter. They're doing that to save money, to because of budget cuts. But if you notice, every time they do it, they just hired a big name or a couple of big names. They have to free up something to pay their salary. Oh, let's dump these other 10 people.
Yeah. And it's like with a union, they would have to offer health insurance. They would have to pay, they would have to pay in Social Security, things of that nature to take care of these people. Because here's the thing, the WWE is a billion-dollar corporation. And I know there's other companies, wrestling as a whole, wrestlers have to take care of themselves. But I feel like with other companies, there's a little more compassion as far as, the wrestlers are concerned. With WWE, it's like your name's on a spreadsheet. Unless you are, Roman Reigns, Brock Lesnar, John Cena, top of the mountain guys. But everybody else is like names on a spreadsheet. And it's like even transportation. Wrestlers are now, this was years ago, but WWE stopped paying for their transportation. So they're responsible for whether it's renting a car, plane tickets, whatever. It's all on their own dime. They get hurt for the most part. They've got to pay their own hospital bills. They've got to try to save money and put up, for when they do retire. That way they'll have money saved. And it's like, especially now in this economy, how are you supposed to save any kind of money? Because the price of everything is skyrocketing. And how are you, especially the lower tier people? Like remember the one episode we were looking at salaries, and some of the people were making like $80,000 to $100,000 a year, and they're on the road 300 days a year. And it's like, how could you possibly save any kind of money? Because you've got to put a substantial amount of money back because of the wear and tear you put on your body.
Yep. And right now, and I even told my wife this the other day, I feel like I'm paying for the gas money that I'm earning the gas money for the gas that it takes me just to get to my job to earn that money. It's like, because I've heard a lot of people, like they weren't necessarily single parents, but sometimes you only had one parent who was working there, because they said it was to the point where if they worked, they were only making enough money just to pay the babysitter.
Yep.
And that's what it feels like right now with the fuel prices, with the way they are.
Yeah.
And I can't imagine where, I'm driving 35 miles there, 35 miles back. It takes about roughly 45 minutes, one way. I couldn't imagine, okay, I'm down there in Cincinnati, but tomorrow night we have a show in Chicago.
Right.
Or St. Louis, something that's, maybe half a day drive. Well, I think St. Louis would be almost an all day drive, but and there's some who do it. There's some they'd rather drive than fly.
Yeah.
And so they're spending all that money for their gas. And yes, I know they can write it off in their taxes, and but the WWE, they don't pay their taxes for them, so they have to do it themselves.
Exactly. And you've got to make sure, and they've got to make sure that they pay their taxes every quarter. And it's just a lot of stuff that if they had a union, all that burden would not be on the wrestler.
Right.
Because you have $1 billion company making record profits every quarter when they announce their earnings. But then you've got wrestlers struggling to make ends meet.
Right. I mean, and I know the wrestler we were talking about specifically was Tamina, because I saw her salary and I almost fell out of my chair. I'm like, I make significantly more than her, and I ain't exactly a millionaire.
It's like, and she's been there 12 years. She's been there. She's seen people come and go, and she's still one of the lowest paid performers on the roster.
And this is one of the cases where they gotta say, look, in the wrestlers, I mean, they're to the point now where they're like, I'm done. And they could have like a massive, what they call it, like the sick out, where everybody calls in sick.
Yeah.
Like, what are you going to do?
Yeah.
You're going to try to fire them because they called in sick. Even though, because they're not given that, well, they're all salaried, even though they're on they're contractors.
Yeah.
But they're still salaried.
And but it's like, even the downside guarantees, from what I understand, they haven't even been making their downside guarantees because they haven't been running as many house shows.
Right. And they can't say it's necessarily because of COVID, because COVID restrictions, for the most part, kind of depends on where you go, have been lifted.
Yeah.
And here's another idea. WWE, most of your talent lives in Florida. So you may want to not have too much stuff going on outside of Florida. Don't make them travel too far. And I know that hurts the rest of the country, but you can't keep them on the road with the wear and tear and then expect them to pay for them the stuff. Oh, by the way, you take care of your own taxes. Well, a lot of them have actually wisened up, and they've said, you know what, I'm going to hire an accountant. They can take care of all that, because here's another thing about the paying the taxes. They have to pay the state taxes for whatever state they happen to be wrestling in that day. Which to me is really weird, but
yeah, shouldn't it just be whatever state you actually live in?
You would think. Well, we have people who, because we're right on, of course, on the Ohio River, right across from Kentucky, and we're right there by Indiana. We have people. I work with people who live in Kentucky and some who live in Indiana. So, but they're paying both kind of taxes.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's how it is here. I have some friends who work in Kentucky but live in Tennessee, and they've got to pay both taxes.
And you live close enough to Illinois, also in Missouri.
Yeah, Metropolis, Illinois is literally 15 minutes from my house.
See, Batman. No, Superman.
Yep.
I mean, well, they're all in the same universe. But right now, I'm just trying to think. I don't think Brock Lesnar, I don't think he would push too hard against it. He's not, as much as what Brock Lesnar gets on my nerves, I don't think he's like Hulk Hogan, where he's going to go out of his way to screw somebody over just to benefit himself.
No, I think Brock is like, as long as I get mine, I don't care what everybody, I don't care.
Right.
I don't care if everybody else gets it too, as long as I'm getting mine, as long as it doesn't interfere with my money.
Right.
But like the independent contractor thing you were just talking about, you look at most every other company, especially just Impact Wrestling and AEW, for example, their wrestlers are considered independent contractors. They're also allowed to work other places. They're also allowed to work, because you look at Matt Cardona. Matt Cardona is signed to Impact Wrestling. He also works for the NWA. He also works for the other 6 or 7 different promotions that he's currently holds championships with. I mean, he's under contract with WWE. Not WWE. He's under contract with Impact Wrestling. He's the current NWA World Heavyweight Champion. John Moxley, under contract with AEW. He's the reigning GCW World Heavyweight Champion. These people, Wheeler Yuta is the Ring of Honor Pure Champion, which is owned by Tony Khan, is wrestling in the New Japan Pro Wrestling Super Juniors tournament. I mean, these people are allowed to work other places because that's what an independent contractor does. They're not just tied to one company, but WWE still calls their employees, and that's what they are. They're employees, because you signed them to a contract and said you can only work for me. It's like my job. I can only work for this job. So you can't call them independent contractors, but then say, well, you're under lock and key to us and you can't go anywhere else or do anything, and even certain outside ventures like Twitch and things like that. You can't do any of that without us reaching in your pocket to get our piece.
Which I understood the intellectual property thing, because if the WWE if they trademark the name, then okay, you can't use that name outside of here to get other income.
Yeah, but most of them were using either their own name or an old name that they used to use before they went to WWE. So it wasn't even that. It's just WWE figured it out.
Yeah, and that's what the heartburn was. It's like, okay, I get you're saying that. Well, Hulk Hogan, he trademarked his own name,
right?
But like, if Sasha Banks wanted to do her own Twitch or OnlyFans, which I think OnlyFans, if you tell me you have an OnlyFans account, I'm honest with you, I lose respect for you. I mean, because I'm like, oh, okay. But anyway, not that I'm judging, but I'm like, OnlyFans, it's kind of there just for, it's like, it's not quite porn, and I think that's what they're going for. But anyway, but I get if they said you can't use the name Sasha Banks. All right. But if they came out and said, well, just you being on there, even if you are using the name Mercedes, which is your real name, it's actually on your birth certificate, on your driver's license, on every piece of official identification you have, we're still going to take a certain percentage, because if it wasn't for us, you wouldn't. No, it's not how it works.
Yeah, that's what Zelina Vega's big issue was. It's like, I've built this from the ground up. I used my real name, and this was absolutely separate from my wrestling career. This is something I've built, and it's like I never felt like WWE had the right to just say, well, if you're going to continue this, it has to be under our control so that we can get a percentage. And it's like, no, that's not how it works. If they built this on their own without you, then you don't get to reach in their pocket and take your cut, so to speak.
Right. And we said before that WWE, they seem to be repeating the old bad habits of other promotions. That's one Vern Gagne used to try to do.
Yeah. And he lost a lot of talent that way. I mean, Hulk Hogan was one of them. Hulk Hogan was wrestling in Japan, and Vern Gagne wanted a percentage of what Hogan was making from his Japan bookings. And it's like, and I'm not a Hulk Hogan fan at all, but he was in the right. It's like, this had nothing to do. If Vern Gagne and the AWA had have helped negotiate those deals and things like that,
then fine.
Then you were acting as an agent, you get your 10% or whatever. But Hogan did these negotiations all on his own without, he didn't need Vern Gagne to do it, but Vern was like, oh, well, you're making money over here, so I'm gonna need some of it.
Right. And Fabulous Moolah, of course, it's come out after she passed away, that Moolah actually did things like that. Speaking of a reason probably to have a union.
Yeah.
Because when you have one person controlling all the wrestlers, no matter what, she was controlling all the women wrestlers at the time, or probably 95% of them.
Yeah, in the entire country. And it's like, Moolah dictated where people worked, when they could work, if they got work, depending on, if they did the right thing, so to speak. And it's just, they definitely would have needed it. They definitely needed a union.
They would have needed a union against what, if you think about the way she ran things, it was a kind of a union because everybody kind of fell under her umbrella. But she was the union leader, controlling everything. You didn't work unless you worked for her.
Yeah.
And there's another one of the flip sides of that is, what if somebody doesn't want to be in the union, but they still want to work?
Yeah, Moolah's thing was kind of like, here's the part of it that's kind of like a union, but then the sides fold and it's like, now here's the pyramid scheme, and I'm on the top of the pyramid.
And you're going to pay me.
Yeah, and you're going to pay me. or you're not going to get booked anywhere.
Yeah, and I'm the women's champion, and I have been the women's champion since 1957.
I know.
And,
it's like I've been the champion for like 400 years, so it's like,
yeah, and I'm a grandmother now, and I'm still champion.
Yeah, I mean, but she was the top draw for forever, for decades, as far as women wrestling goes. So none of the other women could really just, what are they going to say? No, I mean, they if you wanted to work back then, you had to deal with Muda.
Yep, I say I had to deal with Muda. I don't think I don't know which would be worse to having to deal with, Moolah or Muda.
Yeah,
because both of them are kicking the face. So, but right now, I mean, it does it just kind of feel like everything is it's almost on the verge of collapse in a way.
Mm-hmm.
And I hate saying that because I mean, this is wrestling we're talking about. I mean, it's something that we've both been watching since we were kids.
Yeah,
where we didn't understand a lot of the stuff that we're talking about now.
I feel like it's been like a house of cards for a long time. And then I feel like that all these wrestlers that were the foundation of that house of cards are pulling out. They're like, I've had enough. I mean, you got the MJF situation over in AEW. You've got, Sasha and Naomi over in WWE. You've got, to an extent, you got the Cody Rhodes situation. He wasn't happy with, what he thought he should be making. And my thing is, know your worth. And I feel like these people, I feel like wrestlers are getting to the point that they know their worth. And it's like, if you're not going to take care of me over here, I know they'll take care of me over here. And whatever your opinion on that is, I'm still going to support the worker and not the billionaire.
Right.
Because, because these are the people that are busting their butts to make these people billionaires. So it's like they need to be shown some respect.
And I think Tony Khan does his best to actually take care of his people.
Yeah, I believe he does.
Vince McMahon, you hear different stories.
Mm-hmm.
He's kind of an eccentric cat. I mean, he really is.
Yeah.
Now some of the agents under him, some of those, I've heard stories about because they have not come out and said who it was, but one of the agents told Sasha and Naomi they had bad attitudes and that they better fix their attitudes.
Yeah, they were told twice during that day.
Right.
That they were I think one time they told them they're having a bad attitude and they need to fix their attitude. Another time told them that they were being just spoiled brats and they need to fix their attitude. And it's like, we're married men. Neither one of us are going to tell our wives, oh, you're just being a brat. You need to fix your attitude.
Yeah, because this room is my office. It's not where I'm going to be sleeping.
Exactly. Well, my office is in my bedroom, so I can sleep in here, but everything else is out there.
Yeah, and she's going to be standing there like with this going,
yeah, go ahead. It's like, what was that you said?
Go ahead, go to sleep.
And it's like, just because, and I'm, and we have daughters, and it's like, just because a woman voices her opinion about something doesn't mean that she has an attitude or that she's being a brat or she's being spoiled or whatever. These women had legitimate concerns about their careers. They had legitimate concerns about their championships and their booking, because I mean, they were getting booked to basically put over the champions. It's like, if you're already champion, why do you need people to put you over? You're already the champion. And if they, as far as Bianca Belair goes, if they hadn't messed that up to begin with, they wouldn't be worried about, oh, well, we still need somebody to help get her over. She was over. I mean, she's still over, but if they have just let that go organically after she beat Sasha at WrestleMania and not just fed her to Becky in 26 seconds just to get that SummerSlam moment.
Oh, well, not only that, but it was a case of, wow, Bianca's champion. Man, I see her having a really long run. Becky's back.
Yeah.
Oh, too bad for that.
Yeah,
you know,
Becky's back. All right, we're gonna need that strap back.
yeah, we're gonna need that. Yeah,
Yeah,
what long run? I don't know. I don't know
yeah. I
what
don't
you're
know what
talking
you're
about.
talking about. I don't remember
Yeah,
saying
what
that.
you got on video? Yeah, that
Yeah,
wasn't me.
yeah. It wasn't me. Oh my God, Becky's back, and nothing against Becky, but it's like,
Work your way back up to it.
yeah, yeah,
There's a long
exactly.
list of women who are already there.
And just get a little sidetracked. People are losing their mind. Do you know any of the results, Double or Nothing? I don't want to ruin anything if you have.
Yeah.
Okay. So people are losing their mind, both good and bad, that CM Punk is the AEW World Champion.
Right.
Me personally, I thought it was a smart move by AEW to put the title on CM Punk, because whoever beats him, that is going to be a huge moment.
Mm-hmm.
And that's going to make somebody when he gets beat.
Hangman, you beat the champion to get made.
Exactly.
You don't have the champion beat somebody else to get made, with a few exceptions. Hogan was champion. He beat Andre and it pushed him up.
Yeah.
But
that happens very rarely.
Exactly.
And that's one of the few instances where that actually worked. That usually doesn't work. It usually backfires. But I'm fine with Punk being champion. People are using the argument on Twitter that, well, if Goldberg or Brock Lesnar or John Cena comes back, people complain because they're taking a spot. But CM Punk comes back after 7 years and wins a world title. And he's also been back for 8 months and worked a regular schedule.
Yes.
And working with younger talent. I mean, Darby Allin, MJF, had one of the best feuds of the year with MJF. He worked with Eddie Kingston. He's had consistently good matches, and he's worked a regular schedule. He didn't come back for a month and walk in and say, I want a shot at the title. And he even said that in a promo after winning the title. He's like, people expected me to come back after 7 years and just walk in and be like, I'm back. I want a shot at the title. He's like, I knew I had to work my way back up. He's like, that's how you're supposed to do it, is work your way back up. And even once you win the title, you're supposed to continually get better as you hold the title. And putting it on CM Punk is a smart move. Everybody knows who CM Punk is. Even your casual fans will know who CM Punk is. So it's going to pull more eyes on the product that way. And again, it's going to make somebody. I hope that somebody is Eddie Kingston. I hope that's who Punk loses the title to. Even if Eddie Kingston only keeps it for a month. I feel like Eddie Kingston has earned a chance. He has earned a chance to be a world champion. He has done this for 22 years now. He has wrestled and won championships for just about every independent company in this country. He's worked for Impact. He is on national television every week. I even put on Twitter, I said, Eddie Kingston is the man. That's the tweet. Because everything Eddie Kingston does is so believable. You believe every single thing he says, his mannerisms, everything. He said something on a promo, and it made me think from my times when I drank. And he said he's feuding with Chris Jericho, and he said in the promo, Chris, you're making these demons come back, and I'm trying to drown these demons. And he's got a bottle of Jack Daniels sitting there, and he said, but my demons know how to swim. And it's just things like that is so relatable. Just that one line is just so relatable to millions of people. And that's the thing with him. And I hope that's who Punk loses to. But back to the union thing, it's just, this is more directed at WWE than anything else, because they're the ones that are, I feel like, that are truly taking advantage of their people. It's like if they had that union structure, and I know unions are not always a good thing, but I feel like their people would be taken care of more. I agree with you. There would not be the mass releases every quarter to pad their revenue sheets and things of that nature. And it's just, you're supposed to be protecting your talent because your talent is the one that's making you a billionaire. Mm-hmm. But instead, it's like they feel like they're entitled to be billionaires. It's like, oh, I'm supposed to be a billionaire and you're supposed to work for me and make me all this money, but then I'm not going to give you any of it.
And Vince McMahon, you would think he grew up in a trailer park in Havelock, North Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
He did not know Vince McMahon Sr. was his dad until he was like 12 or 13 years old.
Yeah. Yeah. He was a teenager before he knew that.
Yeah. And, because he actually grew up, until then, he had the name Vincent Lupton, who was the name of one of his stepdads, because he had multiple stepdads. So he grew up, basically, it didn't matter that his dad was this successful promoter up in the Northeast. He didn't have anything to do with him. So he grew up dirt poor. I mean, he was, by all accounts, the term trailer trash. I mean, he was it. I mean, he lived in a trailer in Havelock, North Carolina. And so you would think that he would be a little bit more appreciative, but I think he's at the point of he's still trying to prove to everybody that he can be the man on the top of the mountain. And so he doesn't want to take, kind of pay it forward. I mean, and I know there's sometimes he has, but at the same time, it's like, dude, look at.
And the times that he has been when he's pressured to do so, not so much out of the goodness of his heart, but it's like, I better do this because the PR is not going to look good if I don't do this.
Well, I know there has been some moments. Pritchard's talking about him on his podcast. Some of the other people have actually talked about him. They said some stuff that you don't see on camera. And they, one night, because they said Vince, they said he basically never sleeps. But Pritchard was saying that one night that he was at the office there in Stamford at like 2:00 in the morning. Well, he went to go find Vince. Well, Vince was down the hallway and he was talking to one of the custodians. Because a lot of times they'll have custodians come in after hours, so there's not as many people there. And he was just talking to the man, just normal conversation. He found out later on that the man, like he either had a wife or a kid who was battling something like cancer. Vince paid for their hospital stay.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. They say he does stuff like that. And he doesn't do it because he doesn't want the publicity to say, hey, look at me, look what I did. Ha ha, pal. But I mean, I do get the PR things. It's like, look, this looks really bad for the company. You better go take care of this quickly. And I get those moments too. But I mean, I think the best example of a company taking care of their people is Ring of Honor.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, Ring of Honor, they absolutely did the right thing during the pandemic. They took care of everybody. Everybody got a paycheck, on a regular basis. Nobody, everybody got paid. I mean, it ended up being kind of the detriment to the company, but
I mean, they promised the people who work for them, we're going to take care of you. They said, if you want to leave, we understand, we get it, but if you stay up until this point, I mean, there is a stoppage point, but we are going to make sure we're taken care of. They didn't walk in and go, hey, you're all out of a job.
Yeah.
You ever seen that happen to somebody? I have, and it's not pretty.
No, it's not.
Because I knew a guy, he worked for our office in Kansas City and just bought a house. Wife was pregnant, and he walked in on a Friday and they said, sorry, your job just got eliminated for the next, the next 2 weeks, of course, he had to leave the building right then. HR, the whole 9 yards, they walked him out the box. But they said the next 2 weeks, basically it's, that's your severance. And he ended up getting rehired for he ended up being my counterpart in Kansas City at that time because I knew who he was and the company actually asked me about him. I said, yeah, but he'd be a good fit. So he ended up getting a 2-week paid vacation that did not go against his vacation days. However, I wouldn't exactly call it vacation when he's stressing out. I mean, he walked in.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. He's stressing about, how am I gonna pay my bills and take care of my family?
Right. I mean, now because he walked in and they said, yeah, your job's been eliminated, he would have been able to draw unemployment, but I've been on unemployment, and
yeah, I have too.
And see, and that's one of the things about the unions. I seriously doubt any of the wrestlers are paying into unemployment.
Yeah.
So
one other thing too, Bryan Danielson has gone on record and said that if a company can release you at any given time for whatever reason, budget cuts or whatever reason they want to use, and then you have a 90-day no compete clause, or a 30-day, like NXT talent has 30-day no compete clause, then shouldn't wrestlers be allowed to quit? Why is it that wrestlers can't quit unless they have to negotiate their release in order to quit? But if WWE wants, because it's mainly WWE he's talking about, if WWE wants to get rid of you, they just cut you for no reason. But you can't leave unless you negotiate their release, and if they don't want to release you, then you're stuck.
Kind of like Mustafa Ali was, and even though he's finally started showing back up on TV, but now if they did it to me, it's like, look, I want to go. No, you can't go. Okay, then put me in the ring. No, we're not gonna put you in the ring. All right, I'm gonna go at home and play Nintendo until y'all figure out what y'all want to do, and y'all still gonna pay me.
That's what Neville. Well, he's wrestling. He goes by Pac now,
right?
But that's what he did. He was he's like, I want out, and especially once they said you were going to drop the cruiserweight title, and he had resurrected the cruiserweight title because it was, even though they had just brought it back the year before, it was pretty worthless because, of course, they didn't put any effort into it, but they wanted him to drop the cruiserweight title to Enzo. And he's like, no.
I remember that.
He's like, no, I'm not doing that. And him and Enzo, they said him and Enzo were friends, and it had nothing to do with Enzo personally. But he's like, storyline wise, that makes no sense. And I'm not. He's like, I'm just not doing that.
At that time, and the only reason I say at that time is because I actually saw Enzo in the ring, 3 months ago. I saw Enzo in the ring. The day I bought this.
Ladies and gentlemen, Steve is holding his replica of the 10 pounds of gold.
I am. But anyway, the very same day I bought this and had it autographed by Tommy Rich. I actually saw Enzo in a tag team match with Tommy Rich. And, and he actually did the whole, my name is Enzo Amore, bonafide G, certified G, bonafide, the whole thing. You can't do that.
Yeah.
He did that. I'm like, are you trying to get sued? Because I'm like, because calling himself NZO, that's his name now. So it is a play on that. So I get what he's doing. But that whole bit, I'm like, all right, you're trying to get sued. But his wrestling ability had gotten a lot better than what it was when he was in WWE. Because his wrestling ability was inversely proportional to his charismatic, like his promos.
And the thing was, they were wanting to basically do it in some kind of like squash thing, and it's like nobody's believing that Enzo was beating Neville. So Neville's like, no, and he's like, he went and asked for his release, and they refused, so he went home
and played Nintendo. He was
like, I would. He's like, just like you said, he's like, I want my release. No. Then book me better. No. Then I'm going home. And he went home. He was home for a year. And he was finally able to negotiate his release.
And I know a lot of the wrestlers, they do have lawyers. Or they have agents, who actually represent them. But those agents, they would just negotiate with the union to negotiate.
Exactly.
Because that is one of the cases. Because you cannot expect people to do the kind of traveling they do and do the actual wrestling in the ring, which I don't care what somebody says, oh, it's fake. Hey, do you do it? No.
Exactly.
You couldn't do it. That's why you're not in there doing it with them. If you think it's so easy to get in there and do it, because it's a lot of wear and tear of their body. they legitimately get hurt, and some of them legitimately get killed. And that's not even talking about, we just passed up the anniversary of Owen Hart getting killed in the ring. And this wasn't a case of that where it was his entrance going wrong. I mean, it was like due to different moves in the ring, like the wrestler down in Mexico for AAA a couple years ago.
Yes. Had a heart attack in the ring.
Yeah, had a heart attack right there in the ring, know, and Rey Mysterio, I mean, he was just beside himself because he thought it was something he did but they had to show, no. I mean, it was trauma that may have caused it, but it wasn't from what Rey did.
No.
And, and have other cases where, you have wrestlers who've broken their necks. You have, legit Pac, Neville, when he broke his leg against Jericho. I mean, you saw it go, it's like, ugh. And he's thinking, I mean, I even think now that he didn't have health insurance. And another promoter that really, those wrestlers, they probably should have formed a union against was Bill Watts.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Because if I cut myself to where I have to have 108 stitches above my eye, I'm not going into work my office job the next day.
No.
I'm taking the time to kind of recover because but he wrestled. Everybody's like, it wrestled the very next day. Everybody's like, oh man, look at Dr. Death. He's just tough. He's a soldier. He wasn't in there. No, he was forced to go in there.
No, he was forced to. Yeah, he was forced to go, or he was going to lose his job.
Right. And now they may have had, I don't know if it was still Mid-South or UWF by that point, whichever, but it was Bill Watts' company. They may have paid for the stitches because it was an accident that happened inside the ring. But he asked Bill Watts, what do you want me to do? He said, you're going to go in there and wrestle. It's like, you made the man wrestle with 108 stitches in his eye. And ladies and gentlemen, look that up. That is not an exaggeration. The man had 108 stitches.
Yeah,
because it was an errant elbow or something like that thrown.
Yeah, I don't remember busted him open the hard way. Yeah.
Was it Terry Taylor that did it?
I believe so. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it was a freak accident. And he had to get in there and wrestle the next day.
Yeah.
I mean, you wouldn't catch me working my office job the next day.
Yeah, and then you've got to protect yourself so the stitches don't get busted open again.
Yeah.
And I don't know how you do that, 108 stitches and above your eye, and then you've got to do a combat sport.
Yeah. Yeah. But I mean, I think we've kind of shown that not only I think it is definitely time for them to maybe form a union, but Jesse Ventura even said later on, he told Vince, he said, I'm not even going to try to form that again. He said, because if they're too stupid to do it on their own, I'm not going to try to do it for them. Because a lot of them he tried and they said no, but then he ended up getting a union himself because he's part of SAG.
I feel like a lot of wrestlers are just like, I don't want to rock the boat.
Yeah.
Because if it doesn't work out, then I burn this bridge over here.
Because they don't want to be known as, like you said, one to rock the boat, even though it's going to have to take somebody, and this may be the actual time for it, because Sasha, I mean, she's on top of the card. Like I said, Naomi has been at the top, but I mean, but she was kind of away, but then she got in trouble, came back, and so I don't think she's really on rocky ground, but it's not nearly as solid as what Sasha's on.
Yeah.
So maybe it'll take that. And and hopefully they wouldn't have somebody like a Hogan who's playing the backstage politics, going to Vince, going, they're trying to form a union, brother.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
And Jesse Ventura said he has not talked to Hogan since then. He said that he used to be one of his best friends until that.
I don't blame him. It's like, you're going to rat me out to the boss because I'm trying to do something that's going to protect everybody.
Right.
It's because you don't want to, you want to make more money than everybody else.
And Vince, you want to get your workers to be productive where you can make money. Guess what? Take care of them. Make sure they're making money. If they're making the money they should be making, they're going to produce more, which means you're going to make more money anyway.
Yeah.
You're not going to lose money when everybody is doing well, when you're having every show being a sellout, when you're having all the merch being sold out, when you're having, your network buys are doubling. I mean, Vince, take care of your people, because if a company takes care of the people, there will be no need for a union at that particular company.
Yep.
Period. And that's not just that's not just for wrestling. I mean, that's everywhere.
Yeah. And I mean, you look at it, you look at any other sport, every other sport has a players union.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, why doesn't wrestling? And I know basically the sports entertainment label was created to get around certain tax issues and things of that nature.
Yep. And licensing in
And licensing,
states.
yeah. And yeah, licensing in different states and get around different, because back then they had actual, sports commissions in certain states. And by saying sports entertainment, it's like, well, we incorporate sports, but it's more entertainment than sport. That way they could get around that kind of thing. And it's like, you're wrestling, Vince. You're pro wrestling, just like every other company.
And here's one thing before we got to go, because I just now realized, we've actually made this pretty good topic. Mm-hmm. I know of at least one state where the individual wrestlers still have to apply for a yearly license to wrestle.
Where?
Kentucky.
Really? A yearly license?
I believe it's a yearly license, because you remember before we had Sid Holland, he was talking, because he was trying to get bookings in Kentucky because he had paid for the license. He's like, now I need to get bookings there to kind of justify
paying for the license. Yeah.
Yep. Because I would be willing to bet that some of the wrestlers in the NWF, they're training with them, but if they don't have their license yet, they can't wrestle at like the Ludlow shows or the Covington shows or things like that.
Yep. That's true. I didn't think about that. That's crazy.
Yep. And Big Mama herself actually told me, we're talking down in Covington, and said something about, because I needed to talk to somebody. And I said, hey, can you tell so-and-so I'm out here, whatever. She's like, I was like, yeah, I can't go back there myself. And they're looking at weird. She's like, yeah. She's like, not only that, but in Kentucky, you're not allowed to unless you're a wrestler. I was like, do what? She's like, yep, that's part of their. Kentucky has some laws, dude. You know that. But I know how you are with the Commonwealth laws, because you don't cheer for Kentucky's basketball team.
Well, I do not.
Yep, exactly. So, but anyway, so there's the Steve know-it-all moment of the day is Kentucky. You have to have a license, to be a professional wrestler. And it's a yearly thing. I don't know. I'm pretty sure there's some other ones out there, but that one I do know for sure. So, but anyway, no idea what we're going to be talking about next week. Maybe we'll have a Monday show again. We've missed the last 3 Mondays.
I know, reasons. Right? Life happens, though.
Oh yeah. Now I'm going to have to send you a reminder next Wednesday.
Yes.
You're coming on the cubicle chat.
Yes.
What's that text? Hey, dude, you ready for tonight? Oh crap, I forgot.
I did. I forgot all about it, and we had made plans, and I'm like, I can't tell my wife. Oh, I got to do this podcast, and she'll be like, do you think so?
So no idea. I mean, there's a lot. Well, actually, you know what? There's a pay-per-view this coming weekend called Hell in a Cell.
There is.
So that tells you how much I've just been like not into WWE lately. It's one of their biggest secondary pay-per-views, and I'm still just like, eh.
Yeah. I mean, the only match that I was honestly looking forward to is Cody and Seth in the Hell in a Cell. But here's the thing: WWE booked themselves in a corner by having Cody win twice. If you're going to have a rubber match, that means it's supposed to be one win apiece, not this guy's won 2 back-to-back matches. So what is the point of the rubber match?
It doesn't make any sense.
I know. It's WWE.
See, if they had a union, maybe we wouldn't have this. You know what? Actually, know that something else before we go. Maybe if they had it, they would actually negotiate and say, "Look, we need to stop all these gimmick matches where people can get legitimately hurt worse, because a Hell in a Cell match, it has a cage and everything else. I mean, the chances of getting hurt is actually greater." So
yeah, I mean, you look at Tim White; he was a referee. He got hurt in the Jericho Triple H match and never refereed again.
Yep, Tommy Young got hurt refereeing. So, but we'll figure all that out So until we meet then, have a good weekend.
You too, man.
Yep.
God bless.
God bless.